Today we're going to continue the series for the Computing Basics 101 tutorial utilizing Fedora Linux. Today the primary intention is to go through the settings menu because it can be quite in-depth and can have quite a few options within it for customizing the look of things, the feel of things, and some settings we're just going to gloss over because they're more advanced and we're not really going to need them in the scope of this tutorial. As you might notice, I just booted into my system. I recommend you do the same thing. You probably have some stuff open if you've been using or working with it. That won't really affect or impact what we've been doing today. If some of you have already dug into the settings menu, some of this might look a little bit familiar, but for the most part, we're just going to go from top to bottom, look through every setting. Opening the little dashboard here, the overview menu as it's called, we're going to go to show apps, or we can search at the top, and I'm going to go to the settings menu with this little gear icon right here. Yours might be in a slightly different spot if you've installed more stuff or moved things around, as we went over in the last couple episodes. But for the most part, this is what we're looking at. When it opens to whatever you were probably open to last. It looks like I was doing something in display. I'm just going to scroll up to the top with the mouse wheel here, or if you're on a laptop, you can use press with your two fingers and swipe up or down, one or the other. We'll look into that setting in a second here when we get to touchpad settings, but you just swipe up and down with your two fingers together, and we'll see it should scroll for you. If that's not working, there is a scroll bar that you can kind of click with your hardware button on your touchpad and move the mouse up to scroll up to the top. We're going to go up here to network first, but what we're going to look over a little bit is some of the additional options and menus that are available here in the settings menu before looking through the actual settings. So we have a search menu here on the left, which is pretty simple what that would do. This allows us to search for any setting that we might find within this menu. So we can just open up settings and say I want to look for change my password or something. I can go to password and it'll bring up the users menu. If I can just click this, it'll go to a quick shortcut to my users menu. That's a quick little overview of how kind of the search would work. It's fairly simple. Basically, if you need to find something in a pinch and you don't want to go scrolling through or looking in submenus, you can just use the search and feel free to use that. We have a main menu here on just the right side of this, which shows that little help menu, which will open a documentation page for what some of these options mean. If you don't fully understand something in this tutorial, feel free to go look at that. Also, keyboard shortcuts, most people probably aren't going to be interested in looking at that. If you are, feel free to click on it and look through it. We're going to start at the top here and look at network, which we've already used a little bit when we first connected to our Wi-Fi connection, or if you're using a wired connection, it's probably already done. What we're going to see here is a bunch of different settings for wired. Wireless will show up here just underneath of wired if you have a wireless connection. Since I'm running this in a virtual machine, it doesn't have a wireless adapter according to it. But if you're on a laptop or something and you have a wireless network adapter, then it will show a little wireless menu here that will look kind of similar to what we see. We can click this little addition button here to pull up kind of a force profile. So if for some reason your connection isn't showing up as expected, then you can type it in manually here. If you don't know what most of this is, it probably won't matter for you anyway. This is more of a system administrator or advanced user menu. So if you know what you're looking for, or if you are utilizing another tutorial elsewhere to do something specific with your network, like changing how your addresses work or changing your security protocol, this would be something you would use for that. You get the same menu if you click this little gear icon or settings icon next to your connection. It'll pull up something very similar for that specific connection. You can change some settings about it. We can see here that we have a way to turn our connection on and off with the switch here, and we can also set up VPNs. I don't really have anything on here available, but it will have some options depending on what you want to use. As you install certain things, maybe some people here use something like Proton VPN. You can set that up and have a VPN connection consistently. That's something up to you. Sometimes VPNs can provide extra security. That's kind of an argument of whether it works or not. Finally, down here at the bottom, we can see this proxy menu. This is something that most people will probably never use in their life unless you're using a local proxy or you know what you're looking for. Most of this networking settings you'll probably never really mess with other than connecting to a wireless or wired access point or network in your home or at work or something. So for the most part, if you don't know what this is, don't feel bad because this is more advanced stuff that we're probably not going to need. You can see things are kind of categorized over here based on apps and how things interact, appearance, and then obviously this is networking we're looking at, so we can go to Bluetooth next. If I don't have a Bluetooth connection apparently on this virtual machine that I'm running on, But if I did, then you'd have a switch up here in the top right to enable and disable it, and there would be a couple buttons down here at the bottom to add or remove Bluetooth devices. Adding Bluetooth devices is as simple as it would be on your phone. You just hit add, and anything that's set up to be paired, say a smartwatch or a speaker or something in the local area, will show up here. You hit connect, and it's pretty basic and simple. Some settings will show up in there for changing Bluetooth device names, disconnecting, forgetting, things like that. Going over here to appearance, this is pretty simple compared to some other desktop environment systems where we'll see we only have a light and a dark mode, or rather a default and a dark mode option, which is basically what these windows look like. So if you remember up here in the top right, we had this dark style button. This is a shortcut to toggle between these. So if I click dark, this window will go dark and the background will change slightly. As you can see, most of these wallpapers down here, we can just select and change. I personally prefer this keyboard one because it fits my style a little better. But if you want anything else, you can click one. You can also select add picture and add one specific picture at a time from your files if you have one. I don't have anything right here. I think I have a screenshot from the bubble on the background. But for the most part, you can add your own pictures, downloading them online, or maybe you have pictures of friends or family or a pet that you want to set. You just put it in a pictures directory, select add picture, utilize this file window, which we haven't really gone over yet. It just looks like it opens the pictures by default, so you can just go in here and select whatever image you'd be wanting to find. In the next episode, we'll be going over how this window works in a little more detail. But for the most part, most people probably just want to use what's in here. You can select a couple of defaults. As I was saying, with this dark and light mode, you can kind of see some of these images have a line down the middle, and they'll change according to if they're on light mode or dark mode. So this is kind of indicating the differences here. If you have your own image, this probably will not happen because it's not really configured to do that. Whatever. I'm just gonna pick a random one. I'll set it back to the bubble one because that's what we had before, and I'll keep it on light mode for the sake of reading, because sometimes people say light mode is a little easier to read text and things because of the contrast issues, but dark mode is usually a little easier on the eyes. I personally prefer dark mode, but I'll leave it on light mode for the sake of this tutorial. Jumping over here to notifications, we can turn on and off do not disturb, which if you recall is the same as up here in the top section for do not disturb on and off. And we can also turn on or off lock screen notifications if you want to keep your privacy. This will mean if you get an email while your computer's locked, it will or will not show up, or something along those lines. If you have a messaging app, like an SMS app from your phone, or really any of these apps, and really any of these apps that show up down here will all display notifications, and you can turn these on or off specifically. You can just select on one of these. Let's do clocks, for example. This notification will probably be something along the lines of when an alarm is coming up or when an alarm is going off, whether or not you want notifications, sound alerts, etc. Most of these settings will be similar for all of these menus down here. And as you install things that require notifications, they'll show up in here. So if you install an email client like Thunderbird, which is my personal preference, you'll see the settings show up down here, and you can turn notifications on or off specifically. Jumping over here to the search, this search is what is in the dashboard or the overview when we hit the Windows key, or we use this button up here in the top left. When we go to the search bar up here, that is what this search menu and these options are configuring. This is what it can search within. So it can search within contacts, files, boxes. That's something more advanced that we might go over in a future episode. Basically, it's kind of what I'm doing here, where I'm virtualizing this machine. I'm virtualizing this Fedora operating system for the sake of recording this on my main system. So this is kind of a more simplistic version of what I'm doing. You can search for calculator stuff. Remember, in the first episode, when I was showing how the search worked, it would do actual calculator operations within the search, as well as search for the calculator. This is something you can turn on or off, calendar, clocks, etc. So you can just kind of search between all these. And I believe there's other settings. Oh no, these is just moving the priority up and down. So I can't really think of any specific examples. Maybe if you wanted to search for a calendar event that included someone's name, and you want that to show up before their contact information, which you might have saved, you can actually just use the button here to move up or down. If I click on this and click move up, it'll just move up through the menu. Or as a shortcut, I can click and drag the 6-dot menu thing here, which is basically a place to grab it, and I can drag it up to the top and it'll reorganize where these go. That's a little bit easier way as opposed to the tedium of clicking on this button, then clicking move down, clicking again, clicking move down. Maybe I want this all the way at the bottom because I don't want to see it and I want to turn it off. So you can really customize how exactly you want the search menu to work. We're going to jump over here to multitasking. This is pretty simple. There's not a lot of settings in here. This goes over the workspaces again that I was talking about earlier. We're going to look at from the top up. So the hot corner here, this is another shortcut. Actually, in addition to clicking this button up here in the top left or using the Windows key to open up the overview, if you just throw, somehow, it doesn't always work, if you throw your mouse into the top left corner, this is supposed to activate the overview. I usually disable this because half the time it activates when I don't want it to. Like I walk away from my computer and I push my keyboard up or something, or a cat jumps on my desk and it pushes the mouse up to the top left corner, this will activate, and I personally dislike that. So I usually turn it off. Of active screen edges, this is really nice. I would suggest most people leave this on unless it drives you nuts specifically. Again, you can turn this off, but what this allows is if I open another window like Firefox, for example, when I drag here we go, it's really slow. When I drag the window to the left side, it will activate this blue square that we can see here now. And it will enable quick snapping and quick tiling of these windows, and now it's automatically filled half the screen. I believe I can do it with this one as well. Yes, I can. And now I have two sides of the screen both filled completely with these applications. If I'm really multitasking and I need to focus on a specific thing or two specific things, I can use active screen edges to automatically resize that. I typically leave those on. We looked at workspaces a little bit in the first episode. We saw how they were dynamic, and I was explaining that it tries to preserve memory and system RAM by automatically adding and removing workspaces as necessary, and kind of prevents the possibility of having an empty workspace in the middle. This is something that kind of turns that off, where you can set a fixed number of these workspaces. I don't actually know what the max is. There might not be one, honestly. Oh, you can see the gray dots growing up here in the top left because I'm adding on workspaces. It's probably not good for my memory, but if I go to this menu now, the overviews, you can see all these empty screens that are over here. So I would suggest not doing this unless it's very important to you, or you want to have you want to know exactly how many you're going to have. So this will not add new workspaces. This will only have as many as 4, for example, and I can set it down to just 1, so I don't have any other workspaces. I typically would leave it on dynamic. Most people are probably going to want to use that. Realistically, if you don't want to use them, you don't even have to affect this, because you just don't use this side window. There's nothing forcing you to use that, so you don't even have to really mess with this setting. This is something most people probably aren't going to use. This is multi-monitor support. Most people on a laptop probably aren't going to use this unless you're using it for work. In which case, if you're using Linux for work, I commend you, because most organizations don't really appreciate Linux users because it messes with all of their in-app settings. It messes with all of their Windows settings. They can't do system administration as easily. So typically Linux isn't really appreciated in the workforce. Believe me, I have first-hand experience with that. What this does is this allows you to turn on or off workspaces for your primary display. So if you're on a laptop plugged into multiple screens, only the laptop screen, or whatever you have set as the primary monitor, which we'll get into when we get to displays, will allow these workspaces. Otherwise, you can turn it on so all of them will have it. And then this is app switching. So what this is doing is when you have multiple tabs open, multiple windows open, if I have Firefox open here and I put it over on this right side workspace, so I have 2 workspaces open now, this is whether or not app switching will enable me to switch between both of them, even if it's not on this workspace or only on this one workspace. So you can see how when I triggered that setting, the Firefox window disappeared. It's still over here on this window. Now if I go to here and I do Alt Tab, the settings is not available. So if you really want to separate out your workspaces, like I said in the first episode, and you want to have one for work and one for school and one for games or something, which I don't know anyone who would have their apps open long enough to do that, but if that's something you do want to do, this might be a setting that would be better for you. So when you're hitting Alt Tab, if you have 10 windows open on different workspaces, you're not going to get a whole list of all of them. You're only going to get the ones that are open right here. That's really up to you. Something I haven't really gone over, I should have gone over in the first episode, but it's prevalent to hear. When I switch to a window that's on a separate workspace, it will automatically jump to that workspace. So now you can see in the top left, I'm on the second workspace, and you can see again here, I'm on the second workspace here. I can go back to the first. So it's kind of a shortcut to jump around between workspaces. So how you want to use that, it's perfectly up to you. Apps here is kind of a simple menu, but also not really. It depends on what you're going to use it for. Most people probably won't even need to use this, but this gets into more advanced settings for things like notifications and search and viewing what applications you have open. If you're familiar with something like iOS or sometimes even Android, some Android operating systems have this as well. This is a list of every application that is installed on your system, where you can just go to it really quick, kind of like the overview, open it, view details, and turn on or off search or notifications. Some things don't have a search or notification because it's just not important to it. Actually, I guess maybe everything has notifications. But some things don't have search, like cheese here, because it doesn't actually have files of its own. It doesn't have data of its own to actually be searched. So this might be something that might be interesting to you. I don't know anyone who would need to use this per se, but this will show some information about apps, and really it just opens the shortcut menu here to the App Store, which we'll go over in a future episode. We're going to look at privacy next, which is more or less just kind of how security would work and what things have access to certain hardware like cameras and microphones. You can look at the screen lock here. So this is when you walk away from your screen, or when you're not touching it for a while, when you're not interacting with it for a while, what it will do. So this will basically turn off the screen in 5 minutes, completely black it out and blank it out, which is more of a power saving measure. And then when it blanks the screen, you can turn on or off whether it will lock the screen as well. So if you have to put your password back in, if you encrypted your drive like we did in the first episode, this will not require the drive to be unencrypted again. It won't require that initial password on boot. It only requires the main system login because the system hasn't shut down. This is also the delay between it. So if the screen blinks out and looks like 5 minutes and I have screen lock turned on, I can tell it if I want it to immediately lock or if I want it to delay a bit. So maybe I want to delay it by 30 seconds. Maybe I'm not paying attention on my phone or something, and when the screen blinks, I want to be able to push a key or shake my mouse around and have it not lock itself. Also, you can turn on or off lock screen notifications from here, which we discussed in the notifications menu. We can look at location services here. This is kind of simple. Mostly no apps really have asked for location access yet. These would be applications like Firefox would be the first one I can think of. Maybe some communications apps. I believe Gnome has a Maps app as well, which would ask for location access when opened. You can just turn off location services in general. Some people care about their privacy more. Also, if you're on a laptop, this might be more prevalent to you than if you're on like a desktop or a home computer that isn't moving, or an office computer that isn't moving a lot. But if you're on a laptop, then this will track where your device is, and it'll update things like your clock, because now you're in a different area. There's like a GPS Maps app. Also, Gnome is kind of getting into the mobile space for cell phones and things, even though it's still kind of experimental. So this would also be brought in there a lot. The file history and trash menu is kind of interesting and might be useful to specific people. I'm not entirely sure what the file history menu does. I couldn't really find what this does. It says it keeps a record of files you've used, so I figured it would be the recent files menu, but that's not really what this is apparently. This says it's shared between apps, so maybe it's some way that Gnome handles app relationships between each other, or the start menu search, the overview search. I'm not exactly sure what this does, but it probably won't matter for most people. If you are concerned about whatever it is, you can just turn it off or tell it to clear. I don't fully know what this would impact. I do know what trash does though, and if I open the files menu, open the overview, go down here to the bottom, this is our file explorer. This is similar to if you use Windows or Mac, you have File Explorer from Windows and Finder from Mac OS, or OS 10, OS X. This is kind of where I'm going to go over this in the next episode actually, of how all these folders work, how to compress things and create new folders. But if we go to trash right here, this is our recycling bin, also similar to on Windows. Right now it's empty, but if I go to pictures, I can demonstrate this. I have this screenshot I took in one of the previous episodes. If I just right click on this and say move to trash, also the delete key is a shortcut to this, it'll say it was moved to trash. I can go down here to trash again, and now it's in here with no thumbnail. What this over here allows is this tells me if this sets the options of if I want to automatically clear the trash can or the recycling bin periodically, how often to do so, if I want to just force it, if I want to clear out temporary files, which I would actually recommend turning on for most people. Temporary files can kind of build up on your system and can cause some slowness depending on how many there are or how many there would be. But again, this is more of a privacy thing, and if you're deleting a lot of photos or a lot of files that maybe you don't want just sitting around on your system for a long period of time, you can just tell it to automatically delete, and it will automatically delete them after this period. So you can set it to like 1 hour, which is really aggressive. Another thing to take into account is if this is turned off, every time you're deleting something, it won't actually clear up space on your computer for a very long period of time. So if you're thinking, oh, my drive's full, for example, maybe you have a small drive in your system, or you just have a lot of files and you went through and deleted several gigabytes worth of files or thousands of files, pictures or videos or whatever you might have had on there that's taking up all the room, they're just going here. They're not actually being deleted. They're not actually being set as anything. It's just the OS, the operating system, is saying, hey, these are deleted, don't show them anywhere. They're still on your drive. If you want to actually delete them, which still isn't secure, so if you were concerned more about someone taking your drive and doing a file scan on it or something, the files are still technically there. But once they're cleared from trash, they are actually gone from the operating system and no longer retrievable as far as the operating system is concerned. If you're really concerned about security and really want to make sure that whatever you emptied from your trash is actually gone for good, there are third-party applications that can go through, and it's called a drive wipe or drive cleaner, and it will actually overwrite that deleted data on the drive and randomize it to make sure it cannot be retrieved through other means, which is kind of a bit more of an advanced thing. Most people using this probably won't be too concerned about that, but I just felt I should say that anyway in case someone goes, well, I deleted this, it's actually gone. Technically, it's not. It just means that Fedora, the operating system, cannot see it anymore. It has set it to deleted and will not be able to see it. So this is where you can go and tell it to automatically delete after a period of time, where a standard user will not be able to find it anymore. And you can hit empty trash here, or the easiest way, in my opinion, is you right click on trash and you just hit empty trash, and that's the shortest way to do so. This will keep generic, like normal people out of your private files, whatever you deleted. But if you're concerned about authorities or someone who's maybe malicious after something like banking information, financial personal information, maybe on your drive, maybe you're selling a computer, empty trash is not good enough to make sure that nothing's left on that drive. We're going to move on down here to online accounts. There's quite a few in this menu. There's actually more than there would have been before. This again kind of connects. I mentioned a little bit in the 0th episode, the installation episode, when we went through and created accounts. I'm gonna have to redo that one because the quality wasn't great. I'm kind of still figuring things out. This allows us to connect various accounts, which these top 3 or 4 allow things like email, contacts, calendar, tasks, files, etc. Like you get Google Drive and Nextcloud Drive and stuff like that connected to these, and these will help a little bit with integration. However, from a personal experience standpoint, some of these, especially if they're like a work account, might not work quite right, quite expected, because they might not let you sign in due to security issues. So like I tried this a couple years ago with my old college login, and it didn't let me log in because of security concerns. It wasn't a quote-unquote certified Google account that I was signing into, like utilizing Google's actual login. It was a third-party system. It's not any less secure. It's more just they turn off that setting. Like this specifically isn't any more secure. It's just they kind of turn off that setting to prevent you from logging into anything, because there are other things that could ask for this login as well that might not be secure. If you have a personal account, feel free to go in and log into these. I personally don't, because I personally like to have more control over what gets logged in where. This will just kind of log you in across the board. It'll try saving a whole bunch of stuff. Personally, for a very beginner, someone who just needs basic Gmail to work, go for it. But if you're looking for a more controlled manner and you want to know exactly what applications have access to what, then I would suggest not utilizing this bit. Going back down over here to sharing, this is kind of simple. Most people aren't going to use this. This is going to be more people trying to set up some kind of file sharing server. That's what file sharing here is. If you want to access your computer remotely through a remote desktop application, if you're trying to stream your music or something from this, again, kind of like a server, or you want to access it remotely. I typically use a lot of these. I actually have 2 servers at my own house that have these kinds of things turned on. Not in Fedora, it's not quite as easy as, not quite as simple as this, but I do have a server that does most of this stuff as well. Just I don't think most beginners are going to use something like this.